Okay, awesome. Laura asked, is organic always best? Okay. I will answer that as we go, or I'll come back to it. All right, let me share so I put together some slides just to help keep me on track. Hope you guys are having a really good week. All right, hold on a second. Let me get to present so you guys can actually see. Okay. So we'll go ahead and start going through this. I always like for the replays to be doable time-wise. I know it's kind of hard to watch these back. But anyway, all right, so talking about debunking nutrition myths, these are things that I hear a lot with the women that come to me that I am like very passionate about, like, no, you can't believe that. That's not always the case. So we'll talk about like some science-backed truths to help navigate some of this. I mean, it is overwhelming. Like social media, I think, has made it insanely overwhelming to figure out like what is legit, what's not. And often, like, I'm still learning and trying to figure that out. And, obviously, like working one on one with people, I'm able to kind of spot patterns on, like, okay, when I see this on labs, this person does better with this, and, kind of put some of those things together. But I mean, I've been doing this for a long time and I'm still learning all the time. So I can only imagine as a consumer, like just looking at social media, how overwhelming some of this stuff can be. Okay, so first we're going to talk about chronic undereating. And I'm super passionate about this because I feel like I do see a lot of women, and being a woman in America, um, we have kind of been through the whole diet culture and we're told that less is more. And I talk to so many women who live their entire lives on a diet, and that is unhealthy and not at all what I'm about. I mean, I'm like very pro food freedom. I'm anti food fear. So, what does that look like in our busy lives? And a lot of times, some of the hardest clients to work with are clients who have been chronic undereaters. So, the myth is that eating less means that you weigh less. And a lot of times, like, we're just grasping at straws, and it's like we hear a lot of like it's calories in, calories out. So I must need to just cut calories, and that is not helpful. The reality is that chronic undereating slows your metabolism, especially when it's done for an extended period of time. So with my clients, I don't let them be in a calorie deficit for really more than like 12 to 16 weeks. Um, there's some wiggle room there as far as like people aren't always like 100% on track for a full, 12 to 16 weeks. But overwhelmingly, I'm not going to leave you in a calorie deficit for more than that. Most women, I think, live with this mindset of, I just all the time need to be eating less, need to be conscious of portions, where I like to kind of reframe it and say, I want you to work really hard during this 12 weeks to accomplish your goal. And then we're going to get back to maintenance calories, and that's where you're going to live. And most people never get to that point. And that's why we do like the yo-yo diet. It has a detrimental impact to your metabolism, your hormones, obviously energy. Really, what we're doing is putting your body in a form of survival mode. It's what we call like a nutritional stressor. So I think a lot of times we view stress as like, sometimes like bad things, but stress can also be good things. It could be eustress, kind of like euphoria. In other words, like a good stressor, but it still, affects our body in the same way. Um, and it is, there is something to be said for it being a nutritional stressor, and that is not helpful, especially when we think about cortisol and adrenals glands and all that kind of stuff. So the end takeaway here is that prolonged calorie deficits can cause lots of different things: menstrual irregularities, bone loss, hair thinning, increased cortisol, because it is that nutritional stressor. So I really encourage the women that I work with to view it as a 12-week buckle down. Let's accomplish as much as we can, with the end goal being eating at maintenance calories, which for most women is around 1,800 to 2,200 calories a day. It's more than you think. But it is not helpful to be in a chronic diet mindset. I also think it's not a good example to our children. So there's lots there. I could talk about that all day. But that is the first myth, not going to help you out. The second one would be that keto is a one size fits all fat burning miracle. I think we're kind of like past the keto craze a little bit, but it's still a thing. And I am not saying like this can actually be a very useful tool with certain clients, especially if we're dealing with things like PCOS, insulin resistance, that sort of thing. I have really good luck with, or good luck, good results with using keto in a very controlled way, always with the end goal of adding carbs back in, and we'll kind of talk about why. But a lot of times, like it's looked as and marketed as a quick fix with rapid fat burning, mental clarity. And I will tell you right now, there are some people who do really well with it and some people who feel like crap on it. They don't have energy, they have brain fog. So this is not good for everyone. The biggest problem that I see is that it's really hard to get fiber in when you're eating a ketogenic diet because carbs are so restricted, and a lot of high fiber foods are carb rich, like beans, legumes, fruits and vegetables. Also, vitamins and antioxidants, a lot of those are limited. It becomes just like especially here in the South, it's like a meat and cheese kind of thing. Um, and lacking those phytonutrients, like I never want to limit phytonutrients for the sake of keeping a carb number so low. Let me move this Zoom thing out of the way because I can't see all those slides. Okay. Um, so obviously, like we don't want to do that long term. So typically when I use keto as a tool with someone, again, I don't do it for longer than 12 to 16 weeks. And then we gradually and very intentionally reintroduce carbohydrates. And I've done it several times and it's always worked as far as the patient being able to tolerate it, not gaining weight, getting those phytonutrients and fiber back, because that is huge for the gut. And I think this is also one of the reasons why, you'll see people do keto and it really does become a yo-yo thing because it's not super sustainable. It's hard to eat like that long time. I mean, it's silly to think that you're not ever going to have carbs again. So it can be a good tool when used in the right way. Something, and I've mentioned in some of the Q&A calls before, I call it Mediterranean keto. And when I look at patients' genetics and macronutrients that they do better with, Mediterranean, like the type of fat is one of the biggest things that comes up. And we'll talk about that a little bit in just a little bit. But just making sure that we approach it with a focus on a lot of healthy fats. So omega-3, like Mediterranean rich fats, I'd be like avocados, olives, nuts and seeds, fatty fish. Not typically how we do it here in the South, where it's just like meat, we get a burger and we take the bun off kind of thing. That is not as helpful. So there are some benefits to keto. Short-term, long-term effects depend heavily on nutrient quality. Obviously, this needs to be very individualized. It does not work and it's not appropriate for everybody. It can be a good tool. Intermittent fasting. This is a good one. Sorry, I hope y'all can't see my Zoom window because I'm like, okay. So intermittent fasting, I love using intermittent fasting as a tool in the right situation, but I see so many women who come in that have tried intermittent fasting, and these are the women who too will say like, I don't eat all day, and then I only eat in the evening, and typically the restriction all day then leads to some binging in the evening, so that is counterproductive. But intermittent fasting has to be done right, especially for women. Women are not small men. There are so many other factors. It makes women very complicated. I have a handful of male clients and they're so easy. It's like, wow, this is so easy. I'm used to like really tough, hard cases. So intermittent fasting can be great. We recommend doing it in a very controlled way, and I'll tell you a little bit about that right now. But the hype is that it's trendy. It's promoted as universally beneficial for weight loss, longevity, metabolic health. It is not universally beneficial. I would say that one of the biggest groups that I see that does not benefit from intermittent fasting is if you are in a state of like what we call like adrenal fatigue or adrenal collapse. Basically, after a period of high stress, when your cortisol goes through the roof, a lot of times after that, your body just gets really tired of it. And it's like, you know what? I'm kind of done with cortisol and I don't like the way it makes me feel. So I'm just going to stop. And we see this really significant crash. Um, and doing intermittent fasting again can be adding the nutritional stressor. So it's kind of like if you're trying to put your foot on a gas pedal and there's no gas left in the tank, and it does not work well. The other thing is that we really have to work in rhythm with females as far as like their menstrual cycle. So fasting during certain parts of the month is great. Fasting during other times of the month is not great. So just as a, I don't want to get, I mean, I could do a whole talk on this, but during the period of ovulation and the week before your cycle, these are times that we don't want to fast more than 12 hours. When you, like the day that you start your cycle till about day 10 to 14, and then between ovulation and your menstrual cycle, those are good times that you can lean into fasting. And it's really interesting. It feels effortless when you do it this way. There's a book that I really like that I use with a lot of my clients called Fast Like a Girl. It's Dr. Mindy Peltz. I don't agree with everything and I don't follow it exactly, but it's a really great book. It's great to listen to on Audible. And I follow and use a lot of her like fasting protocols and fasting techniques with clients, and it works really well if you are looking for something to read. But fasting can trigger stress response. It can disrupt your menstrual cycle. If you're trying to fast, even at times when you shouldn't be fasting, like before your cycle or ovulation. And a lot of times, like it can worsen energy if it's not done correctly. Um, sorry, guys. Okay. Yeah, I just put down there that functional testing helps determine if intermittent fasting suits your metabolism. So the Dutch test is the gold standard in functional medicine for looking at the adrenal system and hormones. So I always like to have that back before I recommend intermittent fasting for a patient, just to make sure that it is going to be in their best interest and it's not going to compound any effect. Okay, your high protein is always good. No exceptions. Okay, well, you guys can tell how that's phrased. Like that's incorrect, just from basic test taking information. But I think that we have been fed this protein message for quite a while now. And I have more and more women coming to me saying, I'm doing high protein, I'm following macros. Like, where is the disconnect? Why can't I lose? And when I dig into the testing, there's many different factors. A lot of it's genetics, a lot of it is like cortisol hormone stuff, and a lot of it is gut pathogens that are disrupting the system and making it really hard to lose weight. But one of the biggest things that I see is that we sacrifice the quality of ingredients for the sake of it being high protein. So all these like Premier protein shakes and Quest protein chips and half these ingredients, first of all, the ingredient list is a mile long and half of them you can't pronounce. It may work at first, but I promise you, when you get in your late 30s, mid to late 30s, early 40s and on, it's not going to work anymore. And these are the women that I see. And that's one of the biggest things that I have to do is tweak some of the ways that we're getting protein, because it's often not through whole food sources. It's from all of this like fake food. I'm not saying that a protein shake cannot be useful in, specific ways, but we have hyped up protein so much that here we have people trying to hit 160 grams of protein all the time, and we're sacrificing the integrity of ingredients just for the sake of it being high protein. So the other big thing is that a lot of times it's like, well, I try to focus on protein, but when we really count how many servings of colorful fruits and vegetables we're getting in a day, it is extremely low. So the high protein diets are popular, but they often miss the bigger nutritional picture. A lot of protein without enough phytonutrients from plants can actually increase inflammation. And when I look at genetics, antioxidant enzymes is one of the panels that we look at. And people, like by and large, Americans get way too few antioxidants. So making sure that we prioritize antioxidants and phytonutrients, the colorful fruits and vegetables, in addition to the protein, is really a mindset shift that needs to happen. So balancing protein with the colorful fruits and vegetables, thinking of protein as part of the team, but not like, I wouldn't say not the star player, but like it's not the only player. Okay. It's got to be surrounded by lots of color and lots of plants. Abby, no. All right. The fifth myth is that fat is bad for you. Um, and avoiding it is the key to staying healthy. Again, this is one of my favorite sections to look at on DNA Core because I really see like, does the patient have a hard time processing saturated fat? Is it really like the type of fat that it, comes down to like really start moving the needle? This plays a big role in inflammation. So the old thinking is, especially in the 90s, was that fat was bad. It was like eggs increase your cholesterol, and we replaced that with sugar, and look where it has gotten us, not in a good spot. So we now know that healthy fats, specifically omega-3 unsaturated fats, are essential for reducing inflammation, supporting your brain, supporting your heart. So I always say like it's omega-3 fats are anti-inflammatory, omega-6 fats tend to be more pro-inflammatory. I don't want to paint the picture of these are always good, these are always bad, because it really is a balance of both. But focusing more on the omega-3s, so the fatty fish, making sure that it's wild caught, olive oil, avocados, nuts and seeds, eggs, like those are all Mediterranean foods that are going to help reduce inflammation, avoiding some of the saturated fats like butters, cheese, trans fats, like from eating out, any fried food, um, low quality red meat. I'm okay with high quality red meat. I do think that some people do better with red meat than others. Social media will say like grass-fed beef is the best thing for you. I agree with that to a point, but again, like looking at genetics, like there are some people from, if you think about like ancestrally, what our ancestors ate in different areas that we lived, some people do better with red meat than others. So I think that just putting blanket statements out on social media, which is, it's all the shock factor, is not helpful. I disagree with that. But a high quality red meat, a leaner cut like a filet or like a 93% lean ground beef is okay. I'm so annoyed that I can't figure out where to put this, y'all. So focusing on quality sources like fish, flaxseed. I will say that from a hormone perspective, if you read Fast Like a Girl in that book, Dr. Mindy talks a lot about flaxseed. I love using flaxseed oil as a drizzle on a salad, like instead of olive oil. You don't necessarily want to heat flaxseed oil because it does not have a very high smoke point. But it's great for salads or like after you've cooked vegetables, like just as a little drizzle. Walnuts, olive oil, and then trans fats, obviously, like absolutely need to avoid trans fats. The FDA many years ago banned trans fats, but what the food companies did to get away with it is that they reduced the serving size so low that they could be able, like it allowed them to be able to put 0 grams of trans fat. If you see the word hydrogenated, you'll see this in like peanut butter, in some oils. But if you see the word hydrogenated, that is trans fat. Even if it says 0 grams of trans fat, that's because it has to. And they've just reduced the serving size low enough that it's like not super significant grams wise, but it is there and it is one chemical molecule away from plastic. And so you never need to consume that. Peter Pan peanut butter, Jif peanut butter, those are two that do have hydrogenated oils, which are trans fats. Myth six, all carbs are bad and should be cut out. The truth is that carbs are used for energy and muscles and our brain. And carbs, a lot of higher carb foods have a lot of fiber. It's a great energy source, but what we want to think about here is focusing on complex carbs, fiber-filled carbs. These are carbs that are going to give you energy, but are going to keep your blood sugar really steady. So, a trick that I have is if you look at a nutrition label, the total grams of carbs, let's say it's 30, and then underneath it, it will say dietary fiber. And let's say it said 7 grams of dietary fiber. If you added a zero after the 7, 70 grams is more than 30 grams of the total carbs. It's really, I feel like this is confusing as I'm explaining it. But if you add a zero to the fiber, that number should be larger than the total carbs. And if that's the case, that is a very good, complex, fiber-filled carb that is not going to have the same effect on your blood sugar as, a simple carbohydrate. Um, so complex carbs from whole grains provide sustained energy. I don't like the term whole grains. I like cringe a little bit. Really what I would like for you to think of is more like beans. Quinoa would be a grain. I'm okay with quinoa. I think sometimes whole grains, like it makes me think of bread that's labeled whole grain. So that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like actual grains that you could go grow out in a garden and eat for yourself. It prevents crashes associated with refined sugars. A lot of carbs are nutrient dense, so fruits and vegetables, like vegetables, are carbs. And we get a lot of fiber, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants that support overall health, help prevent disease. So just thinking that we need to cut them out and not eat them, and that if something is labeled low carb, the food manufacturers really play on this, guys. They'll say low carb, especially like wraps. Y'all see like the low carb wraps? That is such a joke. If you look at a low carb wrap and a regular wrap, there's the same amount of total carbs, but they put fake inulin fiber into those wraps to make them so that they can advertise that the net carbs is really low. I mean, it's such a joke. It makes me mad every time I see it. But food marketing companies are smart. They'll put, on Cheerios, low fat, low cholesterol. And they just twist things. But remember that there are a lot of nutrient dense carbs, and fiber is really important for your gut. So, fiber from carbs feeds the beneficial gut bacteria, supports digestion, immunity, mental health. Remember that 90% of our serotonin is made in our gut. So, making sure that we're feeding the good bacteria. When I look at these gut tests, I mean, you think about coming out of a pandemic where we wore masks and we were hyper sanitary and we've taken rounds of antibiotics and we have chronic stress, and all of those things kill off those good strains of bacteria that are there to protect us and keep bad stuff out. And they feed on fiber, and we consume way too little fiber. So it's no wonder that we don't have good microbiomes, and that, we have a lot of the chronic disease that we do now. Cutting carbs too low can cause nutrient deficiencies, energy crashes, digestive issues. Obviously, choosing the complex carbs are better. Yeah, we don't ever really want to like adjust carbs too fast, because the patients just don't feel great whenever we do that. But I will say, if you're someone who feels like you can't, you can't go without carbs, or you start to feel that like shaky, weak, like sweaty, I need to eat kind of thing, that would be an indication that you're not very metabolically flexible. And we really want to work on that, because that should not be the case. So using functional testing, I mean, this is one of I'm kind of like, in all of this, it's not just a one size fits all. Like, it has to be very tailored to the individual. And especially with social media, it's like, here's the magic answer. You talk to your friends or your sister, and here's what worked for you. But getting the testing and looking at, okay, what does my body need? It takes a lot of the guesswork out, And it also increases patient compliance because when you see on paper what you need to do, it's a lot easier to follow through and actually do it. Um, so looking at hormones, looking at nutrient levels, inflammation markers, genetics, gives a full picture and allows me, specifically like in my work, to tell you, okay, this is exactly what I see that your body needs right now. We do use like targeted supplements in a very specific way. So having a personalized plan, data-driven nutrition to improve energy, hormone balance, long-term health outcomes for your specific needs. And I always tell people like, I want to empower you with the tools that you need to do this long term, like for the rest of your life, so that you don't always need me, but that you feel confident in what your body needs, until you're 80, 90 years old. And the earlier you do it, the better. So this is just an example of a 35-year-old. She had chronic fatigue, irregular menstrual cycles. She tried like all these random things that she saw on social media, like healthy diets. None of them worked. And then when we actually do functional testing, we look at vitamin D. She was deficient in vitamin D. Her genetics showed that she needed more omega 3s. And then from a gut perspective, her gut was not absorbing iron very well. So until we straighten these things out, she could eat the cleanest, most balanced diet, and her body's not able to get the nutrients that it needs from the foods that she was eating. So we're able to give her a tailored plan with balanced macros that fit her genetics, targeted omega-3, adjusted some meal timing, and that improved her energy levels. And she actually got her cycle back. So individualized science-backed approaches over generic nutrition advice. So in conclusion, and then I'll go to the chat. So if y'all have questions, post them in the chat. Just kind of to recap, avoiding the traps, under eating, extreme keto, generic fasting, fat fears, protein imbalance. A lot of times, like that is why it's frustrating and why so many women are like, gosh, I feel like I'm doing everything right. I'm going to the gym, I'm, eating protein and it's not working. And this is why. Focusing on healthy fats, colorful phytonutrients, sustainable eating patterns, because at the end of the day, it has to be sustainable. It has to be doable. We can look and talk about this all day long. And if, it's like, great, it sounds great to talk about it. But when we're actually like living life, trying to survive the days, what does that actually look like? And that is another reason why I like set my program up as working with clients over a period of time, because it is in a lot of that like nitty gritty that the change happens and the guidance needs to be there. Your body is unique. Fuel it smartly with functional testing, individualized guidance for lasting health and vitality. And I think that that's, what all of us want is to be taking care of our bodies. We only get one. We want to feel good when we're 80 years old, not just be alive when we're 80 years old. At least that's a big driver for me. All right, let me get to the chat. First, let me stop sharing my screen so y'all don't have to. Okay, is organic always best? Um, is organic always best? I would say yes, organic is always best. In that, what I mean by that is like if something is labeled organic, I trust the label, okay? So they are a lot more strict with ingredients that can be in something. I wouldn't say that organic, like from a processed food standpoint, that organic is always healthy. There can still be like sugar and things that maybe aren't super helpful. Okay, good. Oh, Laura said, okay, you can't see the Zoom thing. Sorry. I thought you meant like you couldn't see the slide. I was like, slides. I was like, oh no. So organic gives me a layer of reassurance that the ingredients are like not genetically modified and that sort of thing. When it comes to like produce, I don't always buy everything organic. I try to get, I highly recommend the Environmental Working Group app. They have updated lists of like the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. So I try to buy everything on the Dirty Dozen organic. The Clean 15, like bananas, avocados, stuff like that, it doesn't need to be organic. Sure, you're welcome to buy that, but I like to save some money there. Does that answer your question? Okay, when you plan a diet for the mom's genetics, will it also be? Yes, yes, yes. I'm glad you said that, Mandy Grace, because in the last couple days with all the vaccine and Tylenol and all this talk, one of the sections on the genetics is a methylation panel. So you're going to see a lot coming out about MTHFR gene mutation. And I am so passionate about this because I have it. I did not know I had it until I had severe preeclampsia with my first child. And to this day, I can't tell you how many women come to me who have had miscarriages, or a lot of times it'll surface in pregnancy is where things kind of go wrong. We see it linked to heart disease, mental health disorders, and the fact that that is not part of like routine screening absolutely blows my mind. But my point is, because I have done mine and my husband's genetics on DNA Core, I have the boys on a methylated B complex now because mine and my husband's methylation panels are not great. What that also means is that foods fortified with things like B vitamins. So the FDA a while ago, I don't even know how many years ago it was, they said, you know what? Americans don't get enough folate. So they started fortifying like cereals is where you'll find it the most with vitamins and like folic acid. Folic acid is the synthetic version of folate. There's no folic acid anywhere in our bodies. People with the MTHFR or any sort of like abnormal methylation panel cannot use folic acid. We cannot convert that unusable B vitamin to a usable form. And it actually takes up space and like bogs down the receptors that are like actually trying to make that process happen. So not only for me, like when I was pregnant with my oldest child, not only were the prenatal vitamins not helpful, they were actually detrimental because the folic acid that was in them, it wasn't methylfolate. It wasn't the type that my body could actually use. Like, this is a very simple thing that if we looked at, we could help a lot of people and a lot of outcomes from like miscarriages and preeclampsia and all this autism talk, I mean, it's like, it's not just Tylenol, it's not just a vaccine. But if you take an individual with these underlying genetics and maybe a round of antibiotics as a baby for like an ear infection, and then you give the Tylenol and get the vaccine, and all those things happen at once, they're absolutely antecedents that then can lead to this triggering event. Anyway, this, you can tell I'm passionate about this right now. Because, I mean, part of the reason I'm so passionate about it is because I worked in conventional medicine for 12 years and no one talked about this. No one said anything about it. There was like no courses in, nurse practitioner at University of Florida, master's level education that mentioned any of this. And it makes me angry. Um, Especially now, like doing what I do and understanding it, and all the women who come to me and we figure it out. I mean, women who've had, several miscarriages and they won't check MTHFR till you have 3 miscarriages. The only reason they checked it on me is because I had the severe preeclampsia with a poor outcome. I had no family history of preeclampsia. I wasn't overweight, like no risk factors. And the high risk maternal fetal medicine doctor said before I had my second son, it was actually, I was like 7 weeks pregnant with my second son. He said, let's do this panel of labs. And that's when it came up. Um, the Dirty Dozen. Okay, so Dirty Dozen is a list of the fruits and vegetables that have the highest pesticide content. Like, in other words, they're crops that they have, like peaches, berries, they have to spray a lot of pesticides on those things to keep them growing well. Hold on. Abby, Sorry, y'all. I totally forgot to put the dog up before I started this. Okay. Yeah, and then the clean 15 are the fruits and vegetables that they don't have to spray, like they have the lowest amount of like pesticides that have to be used on them. Um, but it's always changing. So the Environmental Working Group app, um, that's where they update it. And that's also an app that like you can scan like personal care products, cleaning products, see kind of like what you have, and kind of where it fits on like the approved kind of stuff. And it also gives options for things to replace it with. So like as I've replaced cleaning products, personal care products, those kind of things, um, I use that app to kind of tell me what brands to use. So do we avoid the dirty dozen? No, you don't avoid them, but the dirty dozen are the ones that you want to buy organic. It's always from a season standpoint, like I always think that sometimes, like as Americans, because our food is so polluted and chemical driven and all that sort of thing, we have like a lot of kids have like 5 to 10 foods that they eat. There's like very little variety. So I always like to work with my clients on leaning into eating seasonally. Go to some local farmers markets. The nutrient quality is going to be a lot better. When we try to eat strawberries all different times of the year, like we don't get the same nutrient quality because they're shipped in from places where it's not 1,000 degrees outside and they have to sit on a truck and they have to make it here. But the Dirty Dozen is simply referring to you want to buy the Dirty Dozen organic. The Clean 15, it doesn't matter if you buy it organic. Doesn't really have anything to do with eating seasonally, except that it's just a good practice to like eat seasonally. And I enjoy teaching the boys that. They love going to the farmer's market, but also just kind of teaching them like, okay, these are the fruits and vegetables that are in season right now. Like what of the, they don't have to eat everything if they don't like it, but what are some of the things that you really like that are in season right now? So hope that makes sense. Any other questions? I want to get in all the questions. But if there's nothing else, I don't want this to be too long as far as rewatching it. But yeah, I will say, Mandy, just kind of going back to the genetics thing. I mean, the kids have half your genetics. So, like anything that we're doing to support your genetics is also going to be beneficial to the family. So. Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you girls for popping in. Please let me know if you have any questions. We'll do another one of these in 2 weeks. So I'll be posting about that. Make sure you're in the community app. And if you have any friends that are interested in any of this, invite them as well, trying to grow that community. And if you have any topic requests or things that you want me to talk about, I always love to hear that because I want to talk about things that are relevant for you guys. All right. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your day, a great rest of your week, and I'll see you in a couple weeks.